Rob Tebbutt here for ID Boxing. I am with the most important man in boxing, Ade Oladipo. Managed to snare him away from his agents and all of his adoring army of fans who have all turned out here in Westfield just for you. Ade, how are you?
Not bad, Rob. How are you, brother?
I'm very well, thanks. Very well. It's nice to catch up. Why don't you return my messages anymore?
Well, I do, this is a lie. I do, but they are a few days later than they should be. So I apologise, Rob.
I long for the glory days where you were sitting at home just waiting for me to message you. And
Rob wants me to go back to the job centre, so I answer his calls all the time. I'm sorry, Rob, I can't do it.
That's all right, I don't want you to do that. Just give me 10% of all of your earnings. But anyway, let's talk about Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua against Jermaine Franklin seems to me to be a pretty good opponent for Anthony Joshua, particularly on the back of those two fights with Alexander Usyk, a wizard of a southpaw. He has somebody a little bit more conventional this weekend.
Yeah, I think people forget that. He's lost his last two. He's lost 3 of his last 5. And we all saw what happened at the end of the Usyk fight as well. Call it what you want, a mental breakdown, whatever. So I think he's okay to have, I wouldn't call it a gimme for someone that's lost his last 2, but for someone maybe outside the top 15. But pressure comes with that as well, because you've got to look good against that opponent. You handpick an opponent that's coming off a defeat himself, you've got to destroy him. And this can't go to points, so there's a bit of pressure added to it as well. But I like it. You know, when it was first announced, Rob, I was like, come on. I have to be honest, because there was talks about Dillian Whyte, there was some talks about Otto Volin, maybe Hrgovic, and when Jermaine Franklin came from nowhere, I was like, what's going on? But now I can understand the business behind it. He needs to look good, and then fingers crossed we get a bigger one in the summer and then a real big one end of the year.
Who do you want next for him? We've seen Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk collapse. Is that the fight we want to see next, or maybe the Wilder fight? Which one floats your boat?
Only those two for me. I want Wilder, I want Fury. You know, I was speaking to someone about this. Like, they're not young. None of these fighters are in their 20s. I mean, Wilder's what, 37? Usyk 35, 36. Like, these fights need to happen now. The idea of waiting and waiting and waiting. I think the only issue with this is that he's only had this one training camp with Derek James, and Derek James might say, in order to fight Fury, we need 1 or 2 more. But if he wins on Saturday and it's destructive, the first question I'm going to ask him is Tyson Fury. Let's do it. Let's roll the dice again. But I think they're going to go, they might go safer and go Dillian Whyte, but what are we waiting for? Like, AJ's not had those fights with Fury or Wilder. Do it. Like, go to the negotiating table, which is never easy, but go there and try and make the fights. It's got to be Fury next. It's got to be.
You mentioned Dillian Whyte there. We've seen reports in the last few days of a trilogy bout with Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora loves a trilogy. What do you make of that if it happens?
Just don't know. It's just a car crash, isn't it? Like, I remember seeing Chisora against Pulev, and it was like 2 old men. And then we saw him get beat up badly, and Fury took it easy on him, and he got hurt and beat up badly by Fury. I don't want to see him fight anymore. And I get it. I understand the commercial value, but I just don't like it. I don't like it. White's still got a bit more left, not much himself, but a bit more. But Chisora, I mean, what do you want? You've had your world title crack, you've made millions, you're clearly doing a lot of behind the scenes now in terms of this promotion stuff with the Saudis. Just stick to that. Like, you can't just keep on going to the well. And the thing about the Whyte fight is it will be violent. You're going to get hurt, it's going to be a lot of punches. I don't want to see it.
Away from this fight, of course, the big news that has been for the last 6 months is Conor Benn. Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn versus Kell Brook. Yet to hear about Conor Benn versus UKAD.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, right? And Robert Smith's like, you ain't fighting nowhere. Like, I'm going to put injunctions out everywhere, and you can kind of understand why he's doing this. Like this has almost now become the biggest drug boxing scandal we've ever seen. It's crazy. Just go to UKAD and clear this up. Sorry, go to UKAD and go to the British Boxing Board of Control and clear it up. And even the Eubank fight, look, I'm going to work on it, I will cover it, so I might be contradicting myself here, but I don't know that's the one everyone wants to see either. Like, the Conor Benn thing's interesting because the matchups with Conor Benn, so we heard about Pacquiao, we heard about Broner a little bit, we're hearing Eubank. It's like they're wanting to fight these past best fighters, and I'm like, Conor Benn isn't broke. You don't need to cash him out. Like, get an Echo Usman, get a Michael Mickinson, get a Blair Cobbs, get those type of. I don't quite understand the trajectory they're doing with Conor. Conor's almost being moved like he's a 35-year-old that's getting these last quick paydays. It's quite strange. But look, yeah, I think for peace of mind for everyone, for all of us that cover it, you have to have a sit down on the British Boxing Board of Control, because this is now getting silly. I don't know what the British Boxing Board of Control can really do, in terms of enforcing whatever they're saying, but it needs to be sorted. It's getting silly now.
Do you not want to see Ben versus Eubank Jr., or do you just not want to see Conor Benn box while all of this is still swirling around?
The latter. I just think it needs to be cleared up. I think it's a mess, and everyone's handled it incorrectly. Eddie would openly admit that he's not done it well. I don't know who's advising Conor Benn, but even the Piers Morgan interview, everything just seems to be wrong. And I think for his own peace of mind, look, he's a British fighter. He needs to fight here. The idea of, okay, we'll fight in America, Australia, the Middle East, because we don't want to talk and have conversations with the British Boxing Board of Control, silly. But I'm not too excited about the Eubank fight. I'm just suddenly getting knocked out viciously. What are we doing? I don't understand. And then the fight's going to be at middleweight. Conor Benn, you're a welterweight. So you're going to go to middleweight and then want to shrink your body back down to 147? Again, I'd love to be a fly on the wall and understand what the plan for Conor Benn is in the next 12 to 18 months, because it confuses me.
Final question for me on that is basically what we've just kind of talked about there. You've got the fights being potentially taken to the Middle East, fighting guys who are retired, who don't currently hold licenses. What message, in your opinion, does it give to clean boxing, clean sport, if Conor Benn is able to box? And look, we know Conor Benn, we've spent time around him, no issue with him, but there's a wider point at hand here, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a bigger problem, because VADA have done their job. And look, Conor Benn will argue and say there are so many sort of grey areas and holes in the job they've done, but they've done their job. And the idea to try and fight them the way you're fighting them, it's incorrect. It's wrong. Especially for a big name like Conor Benn. You want to see a big name like that go through the right channels, and then everyone's like, okay, well, this is how it's done. For him to go through the channels he's going through now, as Eddie's on stage with Diamante, for him to go through the channels now, it's wrong, and I think it looks bad for everyone. And it's so difficult even for me, because I've been very vocal about it. Then I work for the broadcast, I know Conor Benn, so it's awkward for everyone. But it's just wrong, isn't it?
Final one before I let you go, because they are about to get started. What's your final prediction? Joshua versus Franklin?
Destruction. No. 6. It has to be. I know that you're interviewing me, but can I ask you does it have to be a knockout for you?
I think he has to look impressive, yeah. I think this is the right opponent for him, and I feel like, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there, and I don't want to see him labour to points.
If this goes to 10, if this is like round 10 and he's still there, sorry, let's go, then I'm panicking.
Okay, Ade Oladipo, nice to chat to you, superstar. Look forward to catching up with you sometime soon.
Cheers, bro. Thanks a lot, bro. Cheers.